So the Bucks lost last night to Utah. They gave up 1,000,000 threes. But when I look at their first 9 games, they're 5-4. I'm a little concerned. I'm not freaking out. It's not panic mode. I expect them to still be the 1 seed in the East, honestly. Maybe I'm giving them too much credit for that one. But I figured regular season-wise, this team should be fine. But I'm still a little concerned, mainly in the postseason for this team. And I'll go into all of it in the video. But to give you the short version right now, number 1, the defense doesn't look that much different. It's a lot of allowing threes, loading up in the basket. We saw how that worked against Miami. The offense at times still looks kind of awkward, where it's random isolations or improv plays as opposed to specific sets, and more specifically than that for Giannis. I mean, Giannis's pick and rolls, isos, post-ups, they're all pretty similar to what they've been the last couple years. And also, the bench has not been good, and Budenholzer loves to go to the bench. And you could argue that the drop coverage and being willing to give up threes is the most glaring problem with this team. But I'm going to start with Giannis. He's not doing much different. The threes are what they are, whatever. But his free throw percentage is still not great. And his general play calling in the half court is still not that versatile. I mean, there was a play in the Miami game, the second one, where he basically just ran a pick and roll with Lopez up top, and he had a pretty easy layup, and it's just like, oh my goodness, why don't they do that more often? But you go look at all the play number stuff, and Giannis, he runs like 2 pick and rolls a game. He sets 2 screens in the pick and roll a game. Isos, post-ups, he doesn't do either one of those that much. There's stretches in their half-court offense where it's just like Middleton figures something out or Drew figures something out, and Giannis is watching things happen, which is like, wait, what? Like that? This is just completely backwards. I mean, there are times when Giannis just has to create offense out of nothing because he gets an offensive rebound or he cuts to the rim, and it's like, okay, cool, he can do those things, but where is the Giannis elbow isolation? Where is a post-up or a pick and roll or whatever? Now, it's not throughout the entire game or anything, but there's just stretches. Like if you go back and watch the fourth quarter of the game where they blew a pretty big lead to Miami, like a week ago or something. There's like 4 straight plays, or maybe even more than that in the fourth quarter, where it's like a Middleton ISO, Drew ISO. It's like, what is this? Where is Giannis? Where is the specific play call for Giannis? Now, I will say, their half-court offense statistically has been great so far this season. They've also had a couple of massive blowout wins. I mean, Miami packed in that first game they played like third quarter, and then they beat the Bucks the next game. They had a huge one against the Bulls, so I kind of don't care about their half-court numbers, honestly, especially given what we've seen the past couple playoffs. Now, if they were running different sets and it was the best in the league, then I would be more excited, but again, it's basically the same thing it's always been. Drew has not been really featured enough. He has like the same usage rate as Dante DiVincenzo, I believe. Yeah, pretty much. Which is a little weird. I mean, DiVincenzo has been good, and I think he is the one guy on this team who you can look at as somebody who can keep improving, but still, man, you'd think Drew would be just taking more shots, that sort of thing. And I mean, usage rate doesn't have anything to do with how often you handle the ball. It's just possessions that end with you taking a shot or committing a turnover or getting fouled, I believe. But even so, I think it's kind of telling that Drew is just sort of the third guy. It's sort of the distant third guy. He's taking 3 less shots a game than Middleton, as well as 2 less free throws a game. So whether it's simple Drew, Giannis pick and rolls, that would probably be the main thing. I think there is some more opportunity there. I guess now I can get to the infamous Budenholzer drop coverage. Their defense has not really changed that much. There was talk going into this year that it would be a year of adjustments defensively and all that. It's pretty much still the same drop coverage. And it's not just in the obvious ways of pick and rolls, but it's in like wing defenders sagging off of corner shooters a little too much, and then they have to close out too hard when the ball gets to that guy. Or if there's an off-ball screen, one thing they'll do is the guy who was initially defending the shooter, who is having the screen set for them, they'll take a second to make sure the guy who set the screen doesn't roll to the basket, and then they'll fight over the screen or around it or whatever, when sometimes you could just switch those and it wouldn't be as much of a problem. There has been slight moments of maybe switching on the ball, but it turns into this sort of trap thing where the initial defender then runs back to the guy who he was defending in the first place. And it's just like, look, I know Coach Bud has this sort of mentality where I guess he thinks that if you switch, then the defense gets lazy or whatever, but it's okay to switch sometimes, man, especially with this personnel, like Middleton, Giannis, Drew. It's not horrible if the 2-guard is now defending the small forward. Like, it's really not, but Bud is just so insistent on this sort of thing, and again, in the regular season, I'm not too concerned about it, but in the postseason, we've seen it. I mean, it got to the point where Duncan Robinson was getting open threes because the Bucks were not used to switching. It's like, what the hell is that, you know? And that's how the Jazz got a lot of their threes. It's how Miami got a lot of threes in the game that they beat the Bucks in after the Bucks blew them out by 1,000,000 points. In the first game of the season, Jaylen Brown hit a whole bunch of mid-rangers, and the Celtics shot 40% on 40 three-point attempts in that game, I believe it was. So, again, it's the fact that the thing that has plagued them for 2 postseasons in a row is still here. And it doesn't seem like they're that quick to go away from it right now. And that concerns me a bit. Their second unit has not been so good thus far. That might just be because they're playing Giannis's brother a lot of minutes. Like, if they don't play him, maybe the minutes will suddenly get a lot better. But the reason why their bench minutes are more interesting than other teams is because Budenholzer actually goes to that bench in the playoffs, which we've talked about many times. Giannis doesn't play enough in big playoff games, and if Bud is going to play these guys and they're not going to be good, and that's rough. I mean, you'd think between Bryn Forbes, Augustine, Pat Connaughton, Bobby Portis, like none of these guys are necessarily bad players. Portis's percentages have been pretty good with this team. But when you put them all out there together, even if there's 1 or 2 starters out there, it's the type of guys where it's either the defense can attack them or they're not too good as creators, or maybe they're good shooters, but they're not like snipers out there or whatever. If we think about specific playoff matchups, I mean, I think if Philly gets one more shooter, they can really go at what the Bucks like to do. The Celtics with Kemba, and maybe if they make some sort of move, that's a lot of shooting that could go at the Bucks scheme. I think Miles Turner would be kind of the difference in a Pacers-Bucks series. If he was really willing to take threes and if he was making them, then that could really freak the Bucks defense out. Or maybe it would. Maybe they would just keep letting him shoot it, because that is usually a Budenholzer's thing. And I should have mentioned the Nets earlier. It's just they're currently the 8th seed, so I forgot about them for a moment. And, I mean, obviously, KD and Kyrie going up against a drop defense, we know how that could turn out. And same thing can be said for Miami. We saw them do it to the Bucks in the playoffs. They're 3-4 right now. Bit of an awkward start for them. Jimmy's averaging like 10 points. It's kind of weird. But the point being is, for a season that was supposed to be all about adjustments, and that was a big thing that was said. I remember Giannis said something about that. I believe Budenholzer did. And so far, it doesn't look that much different. I think the principles that this team has been running with for a couple years have not changed too much, and I'm sure it makes them an amazing regular season team, and you got to give Budenholzer credit for taking this team that looked like a mess around Giannis and turning them into a real thing. But you still got to be able to make adjustments, and if they're not doing it now, do we have reason to believe it's going to happen in the playoffs, given what we saw the last 2 years?